My family has a house on the mountainside at the edge of the woods. It's a very nice place to visit, especially in winter, when the snow covers everything, from the mountain top to the top of the trees. Even the forest bed looks like a pure white carpet, and the frozen lake can be seen across, shining like a pure diamond. It is located about 2 kilometers from the nearest town, which is convenient. We do not get too many visitors, but we are close enough to get anything we need in a short amount of time. The road is about 100 meters away from the front door, but there's not much traffic going that way because it is a branch of the main highway. All in all, it's a great place to spend a quiet time. This house belonged to my grandparents, so we must take turns with all my uncles every year. I prefer to come in winter because it's a quieter time of the year and can reflect on how my life is going on. When my grandfather was still alive and I was about 8 years old, we used to sit together with my cousins by the fireplace and listen to his great stories, great tales of heroes, scary stories of witches, intriguing experiences about the war. There always seemed to be a great tale to tell. For my part, I always prefer the scary ones, the suspense, the high heartbeat, and the attack of the evil to the unsuspected victim. My father always told my granddad not to tell us that kind of stories because he thought we would not be able to sleep at night, but I always found them fascinating. From him, I learned different legends, vampires, werewolves, the Hat Man, Wendigos, and many more. Although he told us that those were legends and he had not experienced anything like that, he always said that sometimes during the winter or in cold nights, there was a weird feeling surrounding the house. He described it as if evil was lurking in the shadows around the house, ready to strike at any moment. He said that never happened anything to him or his family, but he always gave me the same advice. Sonny, when you feel evil and it knocks on your door, don't answer it. I never knew what that meant until yesterday. This year was my family's turn to use the house during winter, and I was glad about it. I had a difficult term and wanted to have some much needed time off. My sister had just started working on her dream job on a tech company, so she couldn't come. Thanks to this, I came alone with my parents and would have the second floor for myself. The first two were very uneventful days. Most of them we stayed inside, talking about old times with the family. Went to the lake to try to fish and failed miserably because the ice layer was too thick, and went through my grandfather's collection of old history books. Everything was going as expected when my mother said that we were running out of beer, milk, rice, and some other groceries, so we needed to go shopping into town. The third day, early in the morning, we went to town and went straight to the grocery store, where we got everything we needed and more. We were already lining to pay when somebody called me dad. "Rick, how are you, old friend? I didn't know you were here," said the man. "Paul, long time no see," answered my father. Paul was a long-time friend from my father. He ran a very successful restaurant and was carrying 3 full-loaded shopping carts. "You don't come here really often," he said shrewdly. Then he noticed me. "Are you little Tom?" "Well, not so little anymore. How are you, young man?" "I'm great, Mr. Woodson. Happy to be here." The conversation between them went on and ended with Mr. Woodson asking my father to go to a party he was planning for the night. "I'll see you there then. Are you coming, Tom?" he asked me. "Thank you, Mr. Woodson, but I will pass. To be honest, I had a difficult term and I want to have some time to think," I answered. All good, my boy," he replied. He kept looking at me, and after a long silence, he said in a very serious, almost concerned tone, "Just be careful. Do not open the door to anyone. It doesn't matter what they tell you. Do not open, and especially do not let anyone in. Did you hear me?" This sort of warning caught me off guard, but I thought it was just a regular caution from a person who cares about you. "Yes, sir. I'll be very careful," I replied. "It's settled then," and his voice changed to the cheery tone he was using before. "Rick, I'll see you then at 9 p.m. back home." When we arrived at the house, everything seemed normal. But I had this feeling that something was different. It seemed like it was colder than it was supposed to be. There was no wind blowing and darker for that time of the day. My parents were getting ready to go to their party, but I felt uneasy. Why had my father's friend warned me? And why was he so explicit about opening the door? My parents left about 30 minutes before 9 p.m. and made sure that I had everything. I had just eaten, had plenty of snacks. I was allowed to drink 5 beers without them, and well, I had the place for my own. My plan was to watch horror movies while I ate all the snacks. It wasn't the best plan, but I liked it. Everything was normal until the lights outside went on and off several times. I looked through the window to see if anything was wrong, but I saw nothing. When I sat back on the couch, came this weird feeling. I can't quite describe, but it felt like someone was watching me closely. Not just watching me, but doing it with utmost hate, wanting to do harm. I was starting to be aware of this when the lights outside dimmed until you could barely see. When this happened, I realized that this was not normal. This feeling, no wind, the temperature colder than usual. I remember the feeling my grandfather described and the warning I got earlier that day. Something was about to happen. Then, out of nowhere, I heard 3 hard knocks on the window. The power inside the house went off. I was startled and spilled all my beer on the carpet. When I looked through the window, I could not believe my eyes. 2 small children. One seemed to be around 6 and the other around 11. Both were wearing blue hoodies that covered the top of their heads. The smallest one was only tall enough so his head could be barely seen over the window. "Hello," said the eldest one. "We got lost at the edge of the woods. We're looking for our mother. We need to use your phone. Would you please let us in?" I didn't know what was going on or what to say. 2 children lost on that area, when I knew there was nothing closer than the town. I needed to help those 2 poor children, but I kept feeling that this was not normal. "Sir," he repeated, "we are lost. Could you let us in? We need to go inside now." When he said that, I finally was sure something was wrong. He said the last part not as a request, but as an order I had to follow. An irrational fear filled me from head to toe. I did not know why I felt like this. They were only lost children outside our house. While I was thinking all of this, I hadn't realized I had to stoop up from my armchair and move closer to the window, as if the child's command had made me do it. At this distance they seemed more menacing, although I was twice as tall and a wall was between us. But at this distance also, I could see something I hadn't seen before. These kids, their skin was grayish, the same color of a dead body, and their lips were deep purple. Those children seemed to be dead, and the clothes they were wearing were too thin for the extreme cold outside. Even I was wearing more layers of clothing inside the house. At this point I was terrified, but I couldn't move away from the window. I was transfixed on them, like lured by a diabolical force I could not resist and had to obey. Then again, the eldest kid said, "We are lost. We need to use your phone. Please open the door. Open the door now." This time there was no mistake. That was an order he issued. An order I had to follow. Without realizing it, I started to move towards the door with no power to stop myself. As I was doing this, I turned around. I saw for the first time the smallest of the 2 doing something. He was grinning, but a diabolical grin that awakened in me a fear beyond anything I've ever felt. I didn't know what was going to happen to me, but I was sure it was not going to be good. Before long, my hand was on the knob and I turned it open. There was no wind, but the kids were already there, standing on the carpet just outside the door threshold. Both were grinning now, seemed to be in joy beyond their wildest dreams, seemed to be ready for a feast, and I was there, at their mercy, waiting for them to come on me. Then the smallest one raised slowly his head, and when that happened, his hoodie fell. When this happened, my terror intensified. His eyes were pitch black. There were no whites, just black. and some purple veins irradiated from them into his forehead and the side of his head. He was savoring these last moments before he was going to do whatever he was going to do with me. He said in a childish but very commanding voice, grinning from ear to ear, "You have not allowed us to go in. Please, let us in." I felt dizzy. I was terrified beyond any logic. I just felt a terrible force pushing me to say the words. But then, I don't know how, I heard a voice speaking from far away. "No!" I was amazed to realize it was my voice. "What did you say?" said the smallest children. "No!" This time, I knew it was me. They clearly didn't like my reaction. The eldest one lowered his hood and had the same look. Full black eyes, but didn't have the purple veins around him. He was angry, and he was no longer grinning. Had an expression of anger and hate. The small one wasn't grinning either, but his expression changed to a serious one. "Mister, if you don't let us in, we cannot call our mother. Let us in now." "No, you can't come in." "If you don't let us in, we could die out here," said the small child. But this time he had dropped his childish tone and spoke on a voice that was not human. Then he said in a diabolical voice,
"Let us in. Let us in now."
He seemed to have lost control. He was so close to get to his victim and was being denied to it. That made me snap out of the trance and look at the scene clearly. The smallest child was angry, you could tell that, but the eldest one was beyond himself. He was trying to get inside the house, but something seemed to stop him, some invisible barrier. Then I realized why they kept asking for my permission. They couldn't come in without it. I mustered the little courage they had not drained from me yet, and overcoming the terrible fear I had, I said as firmly as possible, "No kids, you are not allowed inside this house. Go away and never come back." It seemed to be magical. Both children calmed down like nothing had happened. Even the one that was struggling to come in. Then the smallest one looked up at me one last time and asked me again, reverting to his childish voice, "Are you sure?" "Yes, I am," I said firmly in a commanding voice. Now I was the one giving the orders. "Go and never come back." I slammed the door and went to the window to see what they were doing. Both kids turned around and started walking towards the road. When they were on the fence, the small one turned around and looked back at me. He grinned again and said,
"Do not worry. Someone will let us in."
Then they kept on going. The moment they crossed the fence, both disappeared. I fell to the floor. Suddenly, the power came back inside the house, and outside the lights were dim no more. I was still terrified, and I don't really know how I survived that encounter. I shuddered to think what would have happened to me if I had let them in. I'm sure I wouldn't be alive. I can't believe such creatures exist, with so much hate and willing to hurt. That happened to me just 2 hours ago, and I certainly can't sleep. I know I'm safe now. I know now how to face them. The last thing they said, "Someone will let us in." It gives me the creeps knowing that right now someone is being hurt by these black-eyed children.
If you reached this far, please give us a like, consider subscribing, activate notifications, and follow us on social media. Soon, we'll be back with more Inside the Cleft of the Mansions.